Last year, a surgeon in Boston removed half of a 6-year-old girl's brain to stop her seizures. The entire left hemisphere. Gone. Doctors told her parents she'd never walk, never talk, never recognize their faces again. 3 months later, she's running, laughing, calling them by name. Her right hemisphere rewired itself, taking over functions it was never designed to handle. Here's the impossible question. If you can lose half your brain and still be you, where exactly do you live? Not in your left hemisphere, clearly, not in any single region. So what are you? Where are you? And how does the immaterial sense of being someone survive when the material structure housing it gets cut in half? Welcome to Logic over Spirit, where we dare to ask the questions that most people avoid. Today, we're tackling something that scientists can't fully explain, religions have debated for millennia, and philosophers lose sleep over. It's not out there in the cosmos. It's right here, inside you. The mind-body problem. The question of how your thoughts, your consciousness, your very sense of self, relates to the 3 pounds of tissue sitting in your skull. For the next few minutes, I'm going to take you on a journey through 3 realms of human understanding. We'll start in the laboratories, where neuroscientists peer into living brains. Then we'll venture into sacred texts and temples where mystics claim to transcend the physical. Finally, we'll enter the arena where philosophers have wrestled with this puzzle for thousands of years. By the end, you won't just understand the mind-body problem. You'll see yourself differently. You'll question assumptions you didn't even know you had. And you might just discover that this ancient mystery has a surprising answer. One that changes everything. So take a deep breath. Feel your lungs expand. Notice how a single thought, your decision to breathe, moved matter. That simple act. It's a miracle we're about to decode. Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Ghost in the Machine. Here's what we know for certain. You have a body, flesh, bone, blood, pumping through vessels. Neurons firing in patterns, chemistry and physics doing their dance. All of this can be measured, weighed, scanned, and quantified. And then there's you. The awareness reading these words right now. The inner voice commenting on everything. The feeling of being someone, of existing, of experiencing. Can you weigh that? Measure it? Put it under a microscope. This is where the problem begins. René Descartes, sitting by his fire in 1641, came to a startling conclusion. He realized he could doubt everything. The chair beneath him might be an illusion. His body could be a dream. But the one thing he couldn't doubt was that he was doubting. Someone was doing the thinking. And that led to his famous declaration, "I think, therefore I am." But Descartes created a puzzle that still haunts us. He split reality into 2 substances. Mind, which thinks but doesn't occupy space. And matter, which occupies space but doesn't think. Your consciousness in one category, your brain is another. The question he couldn't answer, the question that echoes through centuries. How do these 2 interact? When you decide to raise your hand, that decision is a thought, non-physical, yet somehow it causes neurons to fire, muscles to contract, and your very physical hand to move. How does something with no mass, no location, no physical properties cause physical changes? It's like asking how a ghost pushes a door, and yet it happens billions of times a day. Every thought you have that leads to action is crossing this mysterious bridge between mind and matter. Think about pain for a moment. You stub your toe. Physical damage sends signals through nerves to your brain. Chemical and electrical processes. All physical, but then something extraordinary happens. You feel pain, not just neural activity, actual suffering, actual experience. Where does that transformation occur? At what point does mere physical process become a felt experience? This is what philosopher David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness. We can explain the mechanics. We can map every neuron. But we can't explain why any of it feels like anything at all. And here's what makes it truly maddening. You are the only person who has ever experienced your consciousness. I can scan your brain. I can watch which areas light up. But I can never feel what it's like to be you. Your inner world is completely private, completely subjective, and completely mysterious to everyone else. So are you a ghost in a machine? A soul piloting a meat robot? Or is there another explanation? Chapter 2, What Science Reveals. Let's step into the laboratory. Because while philosophy asks questions, science hunts for answers, and what modern neuroscience has discovered is both illuminating and unsettling. Every thought you have correlates with brain activity. Fall in love. Your ventral tegmental area floods with dopamine. Feeling depressed. Your prefrontal cortex shows reduced activity. Remember your childhood? Your hippocampus activates. We can predict with startling accuracy what you're thinking about just by watching your brain scan. In 2008, neuroscientist John Dylan Haynes conducted a remarkable experiment. He put people in brain scanners and asked them to press a button whenever they felt like it. Here's the shocking part. He could predict their decision up to 7 seconds before they consciously decided to act. 7 seconds. The brain activity that led to their choice appeared before they experienced making that choice. What does that mean? It suggests your conscious mind might not be the author of your decisions. It might be more like a spectator, watching decisions your unconscious brain has already made and claiming credit for them. This is where materialist neuroscience arrives. You are your brain. Consciousness is what a brain does. Your thoughts, emotions, sense of self, they're all emergent properties of neural activity, nothing more. Philosopher Daniel Dennett puts it bluntly, consciousness is an illusion created by unconscious processes. But here's where it gets interesting. If consciousness is just brain activity, we should be able to create it artificially. Build a brain complex enough, and consciousness should emerge. Yet no computer, no matter how sophisticated, has ever shown the slightest hint of subjective experience. We can simulate every function of neurons, but we can't simulate what it feels like to be conscious. Then there are cases that defy our understanding. Patients with severe brain damage who maintain consciousness. People who've lost massive amounts of brain tissue yet retain their personality and memories. A famous case involved a man living normally despite having 90% of his brain destroyed by hydrocephalus. His IQ was 75, but he had a job, a family, a life. How? Or consider split-brain patients. People whose corpus callosum, the bridge between brain hemispheres, has been severed. You can show the left eye something the right eye doesn't see, and the person behaves as if they have two separate consciousnesses. Two different wills in one body. Which one is the real person? Neuroscientist Christoph Koch spent decades trying to find the neural correlates of consciousness. He wanted to identify exactly which brain processes create awareness. After years of research, he admitted something remarkable. We have not found the consciousness neuron. We have not found where in the brain consciousness resides. Science has given us incredible insights. We know the brain is necessary for consciousness. Damage it, and consciousness changes or disappears. We know specific regions handle specific functions. We can even manipulate thoughts by stimulating neurons. But knowing the mechanics doesn't answer the fundamental question. A piano's mechanics produce music, but the mechanics aren't the music itself. Your brain's mechanics correlate with consciousness. But are they consciousness, or are they the instrument through which something else plays? Physicist Max Planck, founder of quantum theory, said something that should make us pause. I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. What if science has been looking at the problem backwards? Chapter 3, The Spiritual Dimension. Now let's step out of the laboratory and into sacred ground. Because thousands of years before brain scanners, humans were grappling with consciousness, and the world's religions offer answers that science struggles to address. Almost every spiritual tradition shares a common insight. You are not your body. Your true self transcends the physical. The body is temporary. Consciousness is eternal. In Christianity, you have an immortal soul created by God in His image. Your soul inhabits your body during life and separates at death, continuing in an afterlife. Jesus taught, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul." A clear statement, body and soul are distinct. Islam echoes this. The Quran describes the soul, or Ra, as breathed into humans by Allah. It's the divine spark that makes you more than mere flesh. At death, the soul faces judgment and continues in paradise, or hell. Your consciousness, your choices, your moral being exist independently of your physical form. Hinduism takes it further. Your body is Maya, an illusion. Your true self is Atman, pure consciousness that's actually identical to Brahman, the universal consciousness. You're not a separate being having spiritual experiences. You're an eternal spiritual being having a temporary physical experience. The body dies and is reborn countless times, but consciousness persists. The Bhagavad Gita puts it beautifully. The soul is neither born, nor does it die. It is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. It is not slain when the body is slain. Buddhism offers a fascinating twist. It agrees the body is impermanent, but argues there's no permanent self at all. What you call you is actually a stream of consciousness, constantly changing, arising from moment to moment. The mind-body problem dissolves because neither is permanent. Both are processes, not things. But here's what's remarkable. These traditions don't just make metaphysical claims. They offer technologies of consciousness. Practices that directly investigate the mind-body relationship. Meditation, prayer, fasting, yoga. These aren't just rituals, they're experiments. Ways to manipulate consciousness by manipulating the body, or vice versa. A monk meditating can slow his heart rate to near-death levels. Tibetan Tummo practitioners can raise their body temperature enough to dry wet sheets draped over them in freezing conditions. Through mental training alone, mind controlling matter in ways that seem impossible. Christian mystics report visions and ecstasies. Islamic Sufis achieve states of fana, where individual consciousness merges with divine consciousness. Hindu yogis claim to access higher states of awareness, where the boundary between self and universe dissolves. Are these delusions, brain glitches, or are they accessing something real? Here's what's interesting. When neuroscientists study meditating monks, they find measurable brain changes. Increased gamma wave activity, thickening of the prefrontal cortex, enhanced neuroplasticity. The mental practice creates physical changes. But experienced meditators report something science can't measure, a fundamental shift in the experience of consciousness itself. They describe awareness without content, consciousness experiencing itself directly, without thoughts or sensations as intermediaries. They report that the sense of being a separate self drops away, replaced by something vaster. Jill Bolt Taylor, a neuroscientist, had a stroke that shut down her left hemisphere. She describes the experience. My consciousness soared into an all-knowingness, a being at one with the universe. I was no longer the choreographer of my life. I was the flow of energy in the universe. When her language center went offline, when the part of her brain that creates the narrative self stopped functioning, she didn't experience anything. She experienced something she called nirvana, a state mystics spend lifetimes trying to achieve. What if religion and spirituality have been mapping consciousness from the inside, while science maps it from the outside? What if both are seeing different aspects of the same truth? The spiritual answer to the mind-body problem is clear. You are not your body, you have a body. Your consciousness is primary, fundamental, and in some traditions, eternal. The body is the vehicle, the temporary home, the instrument through which consciousness experiences the physical world. But is faith enough? Can we know? Chapter 4 Philosophy enters the ring. This is where philosophy steps in. The art of asking better questions. Because maybe the mind-body problem persists, because we're asking it wrong. Let's start with materialism. The view that only physical matter exists. In this framework, consciousness is what brains do. It's not a separate substance. It's an emergent property. Like how wetness emerges from H2O molecules that individually aren't wet. Philosopher Daniel Dennett argues consciousness is a user illusion. Your brain creates a simplified narrative of reality, and that narrative is what you experience as consciousness. There's no ghost in the machine because there's no ghost, there's only the machine, modeling itself. This solves the interaction problem neatly. The mind doesn't interact with the body, because the mind is the body. They're the same thing described at different levels. Problem solved. But it creates new problems. If consciousness is an illusion, who's being illused? If there's no real experience, how can there be experiences? And this view struggles desperately with the hard problem. No matter how complexly you arrange matter, why should it feel like anything? Thomas Nagel wrote a famous paper called What Is It Like to Be a Bat? His point, a bat experiences the world through echolocation. We can understand the physics of it. We can map the neural processes, but we can never know what it actually feels like to be a bat. Subjective experience has qualities that can't be reduced to physical descriptions. On the opposite end, we have idealism. The view that consciousness is fundamental and matter is derivative. This flips the usual assumption. Instead of asking how physical processes create consciousness, idealists ask how consciousness creates the experience of physical reality. Bishop Berkeley argued matter doesn't exist independently of perception. To be is to be perceived. What you call the physical world is actually ideas in the mind of God. Your body is an idea. Your brain is an idea. But you, the consciousness, perceiving it all, are primary. Sounds crazy, right? But quantum physics stumbled into something similar. The observer effect shows that the act of observation affects what's observed. Particles exist in probability states until measured. Does consciousness collapse the wave function? Physicists still argue about it. Then there's panpsychism, gaining surprising traction among modern philosophers. This view suggests consciousness isn't produced by matter, but is a fundamental feature of it. Every particle has a primitive form of consciousness. Complex consciousness like yours emerges when matter organizes in complex ways. Philosopher Philip Goff argues this actually makes more sense than materialism. We know consciousness exists because we experience it directly. We only infer matter exists based on our experiences, so which is really more certain? But perhaps the most interesting approach comes from Baruch Spinoza in the 17th century. He proposed neutral monism. The mind and body aren't two substances, they're two attributes of one substance. Two ways of describing the same underlying reality. Think of it like this. You can describe a triangle geometrically or algebraically. Different languages. Same thing. Similarly, mental descriptions and physical descriptions are different ways of talking about the same events. The question isn't how the mind and body interact. They don't interact. They're the same thing viewed from different perspectives. This is elegant. It dissolves the problem rather than solving it. There's no interaction problem, because there's no separation requiring interaction. But here's where philosophy really shines. Thought experiments that probe our intuitions. Imagine we could upload your consciousness to a computer. Every neural pattern, every memory, every aspect of your psychology is perfectly replicated in software. We then destroy your biological brain. Is the upload you? If someone talks to it, it claims to be you, has all your memories, your personality. But are you experiencing what it's experiencing? Or did you die when your brain was destroyed? Now imagine we don't destroy your brain. The upload exists, and so do you. Which is the real you? Both. Neither. What does you even mean? Or consider, what if consciousness isn't in your brain, but is your brain's way of accessing something not local? Like a radio doesn't create the music, it receives it. Damage the radio, the music gets distorted. Destroy the radio, you can't hear the music. But the music itself continues independently. Could your brain be a receiver for consciousness, rather than its generator? It sounds mystical, but it neatly explains phenomena, like near-death experiences, where people report vivid awareness, despite flatline brain activity. Philosopher David Chalmers, after years studying consciousness, admits, we don't have even the beginnings of a physical explanation of consciousness. The materialist framework might be fundamentally inadequate. But idealism and dualism have problems too. If consciousness can exist without matter, why does brain damage affect it so profoundly? If they're separate, how do they coordinate so perfectly? Philosophy hasn't solved the mind-body problem, but it's clarified what needs explaining and shown that our intuitions might be misleading us. Chapter 5, The Unifying Thread. So we have three perspectives. Science says your brain creates consciousness through physical processes. Religion says your soul transcends your body, connected to the divine. Philosophy says we might be asking the wrong question entirely. Are these contradictory, or are they describing different aspects of a larger truth? Let's consider what all three agree on. Consciousness exists. You can't deny it because the act of denial requires consciousness. Whatever else might be an illusion, the fact that you're experiencing something right now is undeniable. They also agree that consciousness and physical reality are intimately connected. Science shows that every thought correlates with brain activity. Religion uses physical practices to access spiritual states. Philosophy recognizes that we only know about matter through conscious experience. The disagreement is about primacy and mechanism. Which came first? How do they relate? But what if that's a false dichotomy? Consider water. At the molecular level, it's H2O molecules bouncing around. At the macroscopic level, it's a liquid that flows. Both descriptions are true. Neither is more fundamental. They're different levels of organization, different ways of describing the same thing. Maybe consciousness and brain activity are like that. Not two things interacting, but one thing viewed from different perspectives. The subjective first-person view and the objective third-person view. Both are real, both are valid, both describe the same underlying reality. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio proposes something fascinating. He argues consciousness arose through evolution as a way for organisms to create internal models of themselves and their environment. It's not separate from the body. It's the body knowing itself. Your sense of self, your emotions, your thoughts, they all arise from your body's constant monitoring of its internal state. You feel fear because your body is preparing to fight or flee. And consciousness is the story your brain tells about what's happening. But here's the twist. That story has causal power. It feeds back into physical processes. Your conscious interpretation of events affects your physiology. Placebo effects aren't fake. Your belief that a pill will help actually triggers healing. Your consciousness literally shapes your matter. This might be the bridge. Consciousness isn't separate from matter, but it's not reducible to it either. It's an emergent property that, once emerged, has real causal influence. Like how the novel created by arranged letters has meaning that transcends the mere physics of ink on paper. Eastern philosophy, particularly Buddhism, has described something similar for thousands of years. The concept of dependent origination. Everything arises in dependence on everything else. The mind and body aren't separate substances, they're mutually dependent processes. Neither has independent existence. Both are real. Both arise together. When you look at it this way, science, religion, and philosophy aren't contradicting each other. They're measuring different aspects of the same elephant. Science measures the mechanisms. Religion explores the subjective depth. Philosophy clarifies the concepts. Together they approach something true. Chapter 6. The Practical Implications. But why does any of this matter? Why should you care about the mind-body problem? Because how you answer it determines how you live. If you believe you are your brain, if consciousness is just neural activity, then free will might be an illusion. Your choices are determined by prior causes, stretching back to the Big Bang. Responsibility becomes complicated. Meaning has to be constructed, not discovered. But there's liberation here too. If you're your brain, then changing your brain changes you. Neuroplasticity means you're not stuck. Therapy, meditation, even medication become tools for reshaping consciousness. You're not fighting against your nature, you're working with it. If you believe you have an eternal soul, if consciousness transcends the body, then your choices have cosmic weight. Morality isn't just social convention, it's spiritual law. Death isn't the end. Your actions ripple into eternity. This brings profound responsibility, but also profound meaning, and it changes how you treat yourself and others. If everyone has an eternal soul, then every person has infinite worth. Not because of what they do or produce, but because of what they are. Dignity becomes inherent, not earned. If you accept that the question might be unanswerable, that consciousness and matter are both real but irreducible to each other, then you embrace mystery. You hold knowledge and wonder in tension. You work with what you can measure while respecting what you can't. Let's get concrete. Think about mental health. If consciousness is purely physical, then depression is a brain malfunction fixable with chemistry. Antidepressants aren't crutches, they're corrections. No shame, just medicine. But if consciousness transcends the physical, then mental suffering might have spiritual dimensions. Medication might treat symptoms while ignoring root causes. Practices like prayer, meditation, connection with nature become not alternatives to medical treatment, but complementary approaches. The truth, both work. For many people, therapy plus medication is more effective than either alone. Because humans aren't just brains or just souls. We're both, we're complex, and healing requires addressing multiple dimensions. Or consider performance. Athletes who visualize their performance improve measurably. Mental rehearsal creates neural pathways similar to physical practice. Your mind shapes your body's capabilities. Literally, thought becomes flesh. Conversely, your body shapes your mind. Posture affects mood. Gut bacteria influence mental health. Exercise treats depression as effectively as some medications. Flesh becomes thought. This bidirectional causation is the lived reality of the mind-body relationship. And understanding it gives you practical tools. You can use your mind to change your body through visualization, meditation, and cognitive restructuring. You can use your body to change your mind through exercise, nutrition, and breath work. You're not passive. You're the interface between mind and matter. And that interface goes both ways. Here's something incredible. Studies show that people who believe they have conscious free will, even if it's technically an illusion, are more ethical, more responsible, and more successful. The belief itself has causal power. So maybe the question isn't whether you truly have free will, or whether consciousness is truly separate from matter. Maybe the question is, which belief serves you better? Which understanding of the mind-body relationship helps you flourish? Because at the end of the day, whether consciousness is fundamental or emergent, whether you have a soul or are a brain, one thing is undeniable. You experience being you. That experience is real. And how you interpret that experience shapes your life. Chapter 7. The Cutting Edge. We're living in a remarkable time. The mind-body problem is no longer just philosophical speculation. We're developing technologies that force us to confront it practically. Brain-computer interfaces are here. Paralyzed patients can move robotic arms with thought alone. Thoughts translated into signals control matter. The boundary between mind and machine blurs. Elon Musk's Neuralink aims to achieve full brain-to-computer integration. Upload memories. Download skills. Merge human consciousness with artificial intelligence. If that happens, where does your mind end, and the technology begin? We're also closing in on artificial general intelligence, AI systems that might achieve or simulate consciousness. But here's the unsettling question. How would we know? If an AI claims to be conscious, how do we test that? You can't measure subjective experience objectively. This isn't science fiction. These are questions researchers grapple with right now. If we create artificial consciousness, do those entities have rights? Can you murder an AI? Is turning off a conscious computer killing? On the medical front, we're exploring consciousness in states previously thought impossible. Patients in vegetative states sometimes show brain activity, suggesting awareness, despite no behavioral response. They might be conscious, but locked in, unable to communicate. Brain scans can detect this, but what about the cases we're missing? How many people are aware but trapped? Psychedelics research is revealing something profound. Substances like psilocybin, DMT, and LSD dramatically alter consciousness while creating measurable brain changes. Users report ego death, unity with the universe, encounters with otherworldly entities. Are these hallucinations, or are they revealing aspects of consciousness normally filtered out by your brain? Neuroscientist Robin Carhart Harris proposes that psychedelics don't add anything to consciousness. They relax the brain's normal constraints, allowing you to perceive more of what's always there. Your brain is a filter, not a generator. Near-death experiences present similar challenges. People clinically dead, no measurable brain activity, report vivid conscious experiences, floating above their bodies, traveling through tunnels of light, encountering deceased relatives. Skeptics call it oxygen deprivation and dying brain activity. But some people report verifiable information they couldn't have known, observed from perspectives their body wasn't in. Are these proof of consciousness beyond the brain? Not quite, but they're data that materialist explanations struggle with. Then there's quantum biology, suggesting quantum effects play roles in consciousness. Penrose and Hameroff's orchestrated objective reduction theory proposes that quantum computations in brain microtubules create consciousness. It's controversial, but it suggests consciousness might be woven into the fabric of reality at the quantum level. What does this all mean? We're approaching a phase shift. Technologies and discoveries are forcing theoretical questions into practical urgency. How we answer the mind-body problem will determine how we build our future. Do we pursue radical life extension trying to preserve consciousness indefinitely? Do we develop machine consciousness? Do we enhance human consciousness through technology? Do we explore consciousness through psychedelics and meditation? All of the above. The choices we make in the next decades will reshape what it means to be human. And those choices rest on our understanding of the mind-body relationship. Chapter 8. The Answer. So after all this, after journeying through science, religion, and philosophy, what's the answer? How does your mind relate to your body? Here's what I think. The mind-body problem is solvable, but not in the way we expected. The solution isn't choosing between dualism, materialism, or idealism. It's recognizing that all three capture partial truths. Your consciousness is real. Undeniably, irreducibly real. It's the one thing you can be absolutely certain of. Descartes was right about that. Your consciousness is also completely dependent on your brain. Damage your brain, and your consciousness changes or ends. Science is right about that. And your consciousness has depths that transcend mere mechanisms. Subjective experience, meaning, love, wonder, these aren't illusions. They're the most real things there are. Religion and spirituality are right about that. The solution is integration. Mind and body aren't two things. They're two aspects of you, two perspectives on one unified existence. Separating them is useful for study, but artificial. In reality, you're a psychosomatic unity, a mind-body. Think of it like this. A coin has two sides, heads and tails. You can study each separately, but they're not separate things. They're aspects of one coin. You can't have heads without tails. Saying heads cause tails, or tails causes heads, is confusing. They arise together. Your mental states and your brain states are like that. Not two things occasionally interacting. One thing viewed from two irreducible perspectives. The inside view and the outside view. Subjective and objective. Both are real, both necessary. This is why purely materialist explanations feel incomplete. They try to explain consciousness in third-person terms, but consciousness is fundamentally first-person. It's like trying to explain redness to someone blind from birth. You can describe wavelengths, but you can't convey the experience. And this is why purely spiritual explanations struggle with brain damage and neuroscience. They try to separate what's fundamentally unified. Your soul, if it exists, doesn't pilot your body. It is your body, experienced from within. The mind-body problem, properly understood, isn't a problem. It's a category mistake. We're asking how two things interact when they're actually one thing described in two languages. But here's where it gets profound. Recognizing this changes everything. You're not a ghost in a machine. You're not a meat robot. You're something far more interesting. You're the universe becoming aware of itself. Matter is organized so complexly that it experiences its own existence. Carl Sagan put it beautifully. The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. That's not poetry. That's the literal truth. The atoms in your body were forged in stellar cores. The same laws that govern galaxies govern your neurons. And somehow, through processes we're still unraveling, those atoms and laws conspired to create you. A being who can contemplate atoms and laws and your own existence. You're not separate from nature. You're not above matter. You are nature. You matter. But it does not just matter. Matter that knows itself. Matter that loves, dreams, wonders, and questions. The mind-body problem is solvable. The solution is recognizing that asking how an immaterial mind affects a material body is like asking how wetness affects water. Wetness is what water does. Consciousness is what sufficiently complex matter does. But calling it just matter misses the extraordinary emergence. You are a mind-body. Not two things, but one miraculous, mysterious, utterly unique phenomenon. And that understanding should fill you with wonder. Conclusion. So where does that leave us? You started this video with a question. How does your mind relate to your body? And I've given you science, religion, philosophy, and synthesis. But here's the truth. Knowing about the mind-body problem isn't the same as experiencing it. Reading about consciousness isn't being conscious. So I'm going to leave you with a practice. Right now, before you click away, do this. Close your eyes, take a breath, notice that you're noticing. Feel the sensation of air filling your lungs. Observe the thoughts arising in your mind. Recognize that there's an awareness underlying all of it. That awareness is you, not your thoughts, not your body, but the consciousness experiencing both. For just 10 seconds, rest in that awareness. Notice how your mind and body aren't separate. How sensation and awareness arise together. How you are the bridge between inner and outer, subject and object. Do it now. I'll wait. Welcome back. What you just experienced, that moment of awareness, aware of itself, that's the answer to the mind-body problem. Not in words. In reality. Your mind and body aren't problems to solve. They're miracles to experience. And every moment you're alive is an opportunity to marvel at the impossible fact of your existence. Science will keep mapping neurons. Religion will keep exploring spiritual depths. Philosophy will keep clarifying concepts, and all three will spiral closer to truth. But you don't have to wait for final answers. You are the answer. Right now, the living, breathing, thinking, feeling solution to the oldest question. So here's my challenge to you. Live like it. Treat your body as the sacred instrument of consciousness. Treat your mind as the embodied, embedded, physical process it is. Don't separate them. Integrate them. Meditate, exercise, think, feel. Be present in your unified mind, body existence. And if this video expanded your understanding, if it made you see yourself differently, then do me a favor, share it. Hit subscribe. Join this community of people who refuse to accept easy answers, who dig deeper, who approach mystery with logic but remain open to spirit, because that's what logic over spirit is about. Not choosing between reason and wonder, but holding both. Using logic to explore spirit. Using spirit to inspire logic. The mind-body problem isn't just an abstract puzzle. It's your life, your existence, your miracle. Now go live it fully. I'm out. Thanks for watching.